this job.
Yeah, and so just thank you.
And aligns with state law and department goals and policies. The board, again, can approve, modify, ask them to withdraw, or reject the project. If it is approved and recommended for funding, then finally, the last step in the approval process is here at the commission, which reviews the projects and decides on the final funding approval. The statutes for the A&H program allow the commission to either approve or deny the funding for the project. And that is the very fast version of the A&H program.
Thank you, Travis. I think we do have a question from Commissioner Hatfield-Hyde.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. That was just the introduction. Okay.
3 of the projects are in Northeast Oregon. The Columbia Plateau Habitat Project will provide supplies and ensure that CRP management work will be conducted with wildlife as a priority. And not the easiest and most economical option that's available to the landowner. The photo here is of a prescribed burn that was conducted as part of this project. And you can see the late winter, early spring burn, followed by spring green up, and then summer growth. This project is for 3 years. The Heppner Regulated Hunt Area provides year-round recreational access in the Heppner and Fossil WMUs for 5 years. And then the third one, the Manulife Access Northeast, was formerly a federally funded project through the NRCS Voluntary Public Access Habitat Incentive Program. But due to federal funding uncertainty, the funds were part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, but they have yet to be allocated. And that opportunity hasn't presented itself, so we don't know when that's going to happen. So these have been directed, this project's been moved to A&H funds, so we can make sure that it is still available for hunters next year. There is one mistake on it. It does end, it is a 3-year project. It ends December 31st, 2028, and not on the 2 years. I think that's a copy and paste issue that snuck through editing. So apologize for that one. The 4th project is the Crestmont Habitat and Hunt project. It's a 3-year habitat-centric project that also runs through December 31st, 2028. The project provides provides $4,500 a year for the 3 years to conduct the habitat work. Hunting is limited on the property, but it's believed as the landowner and the conservation easement holder see that hunting isn't nearly the dilemma that they think it is, that will increase over time. And the staff recommend the commission approve the 4 projects, or approve the Access and Habitat Board recommended projects. Thank you. With that, I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Guess what? That thing that you said you corrected was my question on the Manulife property, because it seemed like it was going to January 2031, but then said it was only funded through 28. But then a follow-up question about that is, if the big beautiful bill dollars come through, then what happens to those dollars? Do they just automatically go back into the Access and Habitat? What happens? Because it's a lot of money.
It is. It absolutely is. Excellent question, Vice Chair. If and when we get those funds, then we'll determine how that project aligns and what to do with it. If we end up getting a large amount of funds and we can redirect those, then we can move the remaining years, however many that may be, onto federal funding, and then update their contract and everything else to reflect that. There's been uncertainty with federal funding for a number of years with the Farm Bill, as anyone in agriculture can attest to. So we've been very conservative in the A&H program to make sure we have a very good back end to be able to afford this. And so this isn't something we could just do indefinitely. Without federal funding coming back in, then 4 or 5 years out, we would be pushing up we'd be spending down our back end far too quickly. But we've been very conservative just for this very reason, knowing that we'd have to probably run 1 to 2 years of the federally funded projects on state funds.
I just want to tell you, I really appreciate what you do and all the work that everybody does down on the committee and to get it to this point. I know we always this is always the fun stuff, so we always zoom through it, but it's really good work and we appreciate you and the people that tee all this up and the landowners that do this too, and the hunters and the raffles and all of it.
We do have, thank you. We have a question from one of the other commissioners, but I want a quick follow-up on this one. The committee contacted us about this, a couple members, about this Manulife project. And this was the issue we just talked about was what that was what the discussion was in the committee as well.
Yeah.
They supported this one.
Yes.
But there was some discussion.
Yes, there was definitely a discussion that there is it's not something that we can maintain. There was a lot of discussion over this particular project. The chair was involved in some of the early meetings and negotiations with Manulife on that. And there was several discussions that ultimately led into where that limit lies. And so this is all a part of that runs up right to that limit that was decided by the A&H board.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris.
Thank you for the work that went into this, and appreciate for those of us who are new, kind of running through what the process is. And the question I have is a process question. So, I mean, these all look like great projects. I'm wondering how many others maybe didn't get the approval of the board, or were these the only 4 that came forward in the most recent round?
Excellent question, Commissioner Morrison. These were the only 4 projects that were before the board. As I said in the early part, it takes a lot of development, and you have to build that relationship to get that credibility between the agency and the landowner. For an access project, we're asking that landowner to be okay with the fact that strangers are going to be on their property with firearms. And that takes a good amount of that credibility and relationship building to ensure that they're going to be okay with that. So, but yes.
Yeah, thank you. I was definitely understand that relationships and trust need to be built, and appreciate the work that's gone into doing that. So the funds then will, the unallocated funds will just remain available until expended? Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
For the new commissioners, one of the things that Travis has managed to do is that the staff generates or works with the people as these projects are generated or requested. Sometimes it's harder to come up with the habitat side, and Travis has managed to get some of those coming through, which is great. So just so you know, Commissioner Laphart.
Ready for a motion?
Yes.
So before I make a motion, I do notice that the votes were 7-0 on all 4 projects. So that's good. That means that everybody's okay with it. So, Madam Chair, I move to approve the 4 projects recommended by the R&E Board as set forth in Attachment 2.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the 4 projects recommended for funding by the Access and Habitat Board. And Michelle, will you call the roll on this one if you would? Dave Moldall.
Laphart,
Yes.
Spellbrink,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Modal,
Yes.
Hall DeFreeze,
Yes.
Hatfield Hyde. Yes. Wall.
Yes, so unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Travis. Then let's go to Exhibit F, R&E Board Appointment and Program Update. And I think, thank you for coming up early for us on this one, Martin.
Sorry, there's an update. Okay. There's an update going on. There's an update going on.
Cancel.
Okay, and then here, and then here. Sharing. It's the sharing one. To go up here. Yeah.
Thank you, Linda.
And this will work for the arrows.
Go
Good,
ahead.
thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, members of the commission, Director Colbert. It's good to see you today. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Marty Olson. I'm the R&E and STEP Coordinator for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I have two issues to bring forward for the commission's consideration today. Before I get into that, like Travis, I would like to give just kind of a brief high-level overview of what the R&E program is for the benefit of our new commissioners, and then, maybe as a refresher for some of the commissioners that have been on the board here for a while. So the R&E program was developed by the Oregon Legislative, or was developed through Oregon Legislative Action back in 1989. And people often confuse what R&E is, or what the R stands for and what the E stands for. So the R stands for restoration and the E stands for enhancement. So restoration and enhancement. And it's a program, it's a grant program that puts money back out on the ground to fund projects that directly benefit sport anglers and commercial salmon anglers across Oregon. So commercial salmon gillnet fishermen and commercial salmon troll fishermen. We operate on a budget of about $3 to $5 million per biennium, and that money comes in from a surcharge on sport fishing licenses and commercial salmon, gillnet, and troll permits, along with a 4-cent per pound landing surcharge on commercially caught salmon and steelhead that come into the dock. So in Oregon, when someone buys a sport fishing license, an adult resident sport fishing license, the R&E program gets $4 from that license sale. And then that comes into the R&E program. So then also from a youth sports pack, we get $1 of the proceeds from that license sale. We get $10 for out-of-state license, for a non-resident out-of-state license that comes into the R&E program. For a commercial salmon trolling permit, we get $65. And then we get $74 from a commercial gillnet permit, a commercial salmon gillnet permit. There's also a 4-cent per pound landing surcharge on commercially sold salmon and steelhead in Oregon that come to the dock. So that's where our program gets our money. And since 1989, we've put about $74 million back out on the ground in the form of projects that have this direct benefit to anglers across Oregon. So any questions on that? I know that's a really high level, just kind of overview, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer additional questions or provide additional information,
No questions so far.
Okay.
Thank you for the overview.
Of course, yeah, certainly. So moving forward, see if I can advance this. So the first issue I have for consideration of the commission is the approval of $882,002 worth of R&E funding for 6 projects that were recommended by the R&E board. So the R&E board met back in September 30th. Oops, here comes Linda. Maybe I'm in trouble. I did. Oh, it didn't advance there. Do you guys want the?
Just got to get the mouse back over to this one.
Refresh.
There we go. Oops. It tried.
That's okay.
Open up. Mhm.
Can I advance to the next slide? Okay, there we go. Okay, I think we're back now.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was just advancing away here, but it wasn't advancing up there. So I'll start over on this slide here if that's
Perfect.
if that works. Okay. So so the first issue for consideration that I have to bring to the commission is the approval of $882,000, $882,002 worth of R&E funds for 6 projects that were recommended for funding by the R&E board. So the board met back in September, and they reviewed a total of 12 project applications that were submitted for R&E funding. 6 of those 12 projects were recommended for funding by the R&E board, and 6 of those projects were denied. And then I think a summary of all those projects were included in the commission packet, I think is attachment 3. So you should have those. So if the commission approves the 6 projects today, that have been recommended by the board, it will leave $98,049 of projected funding left for the rest of the biennium for the R&E program. So that leaves us, we have 2 cycles left, so it leaves that $98,000.
It has to be
If
really
anybody
close out
has
here,
any
which just
questions
drives me
about any of
crazy.
the
So
projects, I'm happy to
we'll
answer those
work
now.
with it.
And
welcome,
if there's no
everybody.
questions, I do have a draft motion
Really glad
prepared
we got to
for
get
those
to this
projects, but
point.
I'll
This
bring it up
is
at the end of
a
the presentation. if
Topic
that's
that,
okay
as
with
Debbie
you, Chair
mentioned,
Wall.
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
We do have a question.
Uh,
Go ahead.
For me,
Commissioner
okay,
Lappard.
thank you,
Yes.
So my question is, Marty, is related to 3 of the projects did have a no vote. Could you explain what the rationale was for, because a lot of times you are unanimous and there seems to be at least one person in 3 of the projects that had some concerns.
Certainly. Chair Wall, Commissioner Labhart, thank you for the question. And this was a little bit unique this time with the project submissions and what we had. So total, so we had many more projects apply than what we had money available for. Total requested, we had a little over $1.4 million worth of project asks come in. We had basically $980,000 available to distribute out to the project. So there was definitely going to be some no votes on some of the projects. We had some really good projects that didn't get funded just because we simply didn't have enough money. And then the no votes on some of the other projects were just, I know there was a project where one of the board members, wanted a little bit more detail in the budget to move forward with that one. So that brought a no vote. I don't feel that it was due to anything wrong with any of the projects. None of the projects were controversial or anything like that. It was just the amount of money that we had that brought the no votes.
Commissioner Spellbrink and then Commissioner Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wall. Yeah, I had a question on one of the ones that failed it had 0 yeses and 5 nos, and that was the Tillamook Basin Chinook Salmon Abundance Estimates. Sponsor was Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Corvallis Research Lab. I guess, do you have any input on that? Why that was?
So and I have my notes here. I'm sorry, I went out of sequence. Chair Wall, Commissioner Spellbrink, sorry about that. So I think the no votes on that one stemmed, number one, from the lack of money that we had to distribute to all the projects. And then I think number 2 was the feeling of direct angler benefit that was brought from that project. Certainly a scientific project, it takes certainly some time to see that benefit come to fruition. And I think that was really what it was, is it was just that perception of the direct angler benefit right away. So,
Probably if there'd been some more, if people would have seen that, these things kind of fly under the radar on a lot of people, because I know from experience and talking to the research lab there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that
Sure.
Tillamook abundance estimates, and which would down the road probably lead to a lot more opportunity if they were, if they were done anyway. So I just I'd like to see that come forward again and
Okay.
maybe put out a little more public information on it. And I think a lot of people would show up and testify for that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Spellbrink.
Commissioner Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, and appreciate the information and the work that's gone into getting these proposals ready. I guess my question is more one of, and you highlighted it in the materials that you provided, that with these projects being funded, I'll back up for a second, look like great projects. Glad to see that many of them have an element of safety in them, which is helpful to see. So support the projects, but it leaves you, as you've noted, less than $100,000 left for the last two rounds of funding during this biennium. Is that kind of normal as far as what you've seen? Does that give you any cause for concern of having such a small residual balance?
Chair Wall, Commissioner Morrison, thank you. So historically within the RNE program, we have 4 cycles per biennium. And historically what we've seen is the first cycle is often referred to as the meeting where you really get a lot of big projects on the ground or taken care of. So I think in the first meeting, we allocated close to $2 million. And then the second meeting, cycle 2, which is this one, you see the number drop a little bit further. So having $100,000 for cycle 3 and 4, certainly I would love to have more money than that within our program. I think everybody would, but the reality is we don't have that much. I'm not concerned in the aspect that we don't have enough money. A lot of times for cycle 3 and 4, you'll see smaller dollar value projects come in that can be done right away. So, if the board maybe allocates, $75,000 in cycle 3 and then $25,000 or whatever the numbers come out to be in cycle 4, that would be totally appropriate. So no, I don't have a concern on that. So
Thank you.
yes, of course.
Thank you. I don't see other questions. So is there a motion?
And I
Or
can,
did I?
I
Sorry.
can.
You want
Sorry,
to do
for a
them
while.
all?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have one more slide and then I can bring up the draft motion slide if
Sure.
that makes it easier for the commission to see the motion on the big screen.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So then the second issue that I have to bring forward for the consideration of the commission is the appointment of 2 new board members to the RNE board. So the RNE board is made up of 7 members. So 3 of those members represent ocean and inland recreational fisheries. That's commonly referred to as the sport fishing representatives on the board. 3 positions on the board represent the commercial salmon fishing industry. And then 1 member represents the public at large. So currently we have 2 members that will term out on December 31st. So they have basically 2 weeks left on their term. So we held open recruitment for those 2 positions that will soon be vacant. And 1 position that will be vacant is a representative for the Ocean and Inland Recreational Fisheries seat. And that's currently held by Dave Groshocks out of Merlin. And then the other position is for a representative of the commercial salmon industry. That's currently held by Susan Chambers out of Coos Bay. So we had 7 applicants apply in total. And after a couple consideration and review, we are recommending that Steve Janego be appointed for the Ocean and Inland Recreational Fisheries position on the RNE board. And then we're recommending that Tim Von Segren be appointed for the position to represent the commercial salmon industry. So Steve Janego, he's the gentleman in the orange jacket on the big screen there. He's fished recreationally in Oregon for well over 50 years. He was a 2-term member on the Salmon Trout Advisory Committee. He was the board chair on the STAC board for multiple years. And he's been a longtime volunteer member or volunteer in the STEP program in Eastern Oregon. So we're excited to recommend Steve as, excited to recommend him for the RNE board. And then Tim Von Segren, he lives in Nehalem. He's been around the commercial salmon industry his entire life. He currently owns a commercial salmon gillnet boat on the Lower Columbia River. He's familiar with the issues faced by today's commercial salmon fishing fleet. And we really feel that Tim will be a great representative for the commercial salmon industry on the R&E board. Board applications were included in the commission packet. I think they were attachment 4, I believe. And certainly I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has about either of the applicants today.
Commissioner Spellbrink, did you have a question or is your card just up? I'm assuming that's not a question. I don't see any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Wall.
Did you have a question, Commissioner Spellbrink?
Yes, thank you, Chair Wall. Did I miss, was there a list of the current members?
Yes, it should have been included in the commission packet as attachment 4.
Anyway, and also I thought the 6 applicants were, or I could have happily voted for any one of them. It's nice to see that kind of volunteerism.
Yes, Chair Wall and Commissioner Spellbrink, yes, we had a very impressive pool of applicants that applied for both positions this time, so thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make a quick comment, Marty, too, and just, it's amazing that over time, this project has, the R&E board has, awarded $74 million. It's the little things that stack up over time, and we really appreciate all these people too that volunteer their time. And also, we had a really good workshop yesterday where we looked at how many people in Oregon are using our natural resources. And what it brings to mind is like this agency is funded a lot by hunting and fishing. And this program is likewise, the commercial fishing and license and all of this. And I just appreciate those people for what they do for Oregon Fish and Wildlife. And I also hope we can find ways in Oregon to capture dollars from other people. I know that's not your committee, but I just thought I'd take this opportunity to slip that in.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So did you want to mention the motions or?
Yeah, I can bring them up here. Thank you, Chair
Perfect.
Wall. On the big screen, I prepared 2 motions for your consideration for both issues. The top issue is the motion for the projects, and then issue number 2 is the bottom motion on the side for the appointment of the 2 new board members.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or is somebody ready to make a motion? Go ahead, Commissioner DePaul.
Right. I move to approve the 6 projects recommended by the R&E board as set forth in attachment 2.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Michelle, did you get the people who? Okay. To approve the 6 projects recommended by the R&E board as was just read into the record. Let's do a thumbs up on this one, commissioners. And Commissioner DeFries, is yours a yes?
Yes.
You do?
Okay.
Where? Oh, okay. On the secret screen, we say, we have unanimous then, motion approved. Thank you. And so let's look to the second motion then. Would you like to take a second shot?
As I chew on a Skittle, thank you. I move to appoint Steve Janego to a 4-year term as a sport fishing representative on the R&E board, and Tim Von Segern to a 4-year term as a commercial salmon industry representative on the R&E board.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to appoint Steve Janego and Tim Von Segern, as was just read into the record. Let's also do this one, if you're willing, on a thumbs up vote. So those approved. And assuming that we have the last one, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wall.
And thank you for
Commissioner.
being flexible on the time
Of
for
course.
us. That helped.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, I think then we are ready to move back to our agenda and look at our informational item for hook regulations for Columbia River recreational and salmon and steelhead fisheries. And it looks like John North and Tucker Jones are going to come up here and do that one.
Commissioner Haldefreeze, can you see the presentation?
All right, thank you. Whenever you're ready, John. I assume you're kicking it off.
You are correct. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Commissioners, and Director Colbert. For the record, my name is John North, Deputy Fish Division Administrator for Marine and Columbia River Programs. Presenting with me today is Tucker Jones, our Ocean Salmon and Columbia River Program Leader, and we also have Jeff Whistler in the room, our Columbia River Fisheries Manager, and he's here to help answer any questions if Tucker and I need to phone a friend. As you requested earlier this year, we're here back again to provide some background on past and present hook regulations in the Columbia River recreational salmon and steelhead fisheries, provide some pros and cons of barbed and barbless hooks, and share our thoughts as requested by the Commission. Our presentation today consists of about 12 slides, starting with some background, which I'll go over, and then Tucker will cover the remainder of the presentation. So next slide. Sorry about that. Most manufactured fish hooks are considered barbed, which means they come with a factory equipped, from the factory equipped with a small little reverse pointing barb near the point of the hook to help prevent fish from escaping once they're hooked. For anglers, a barbed hook can can help bring more fish to the boat or the net or the bank. This is especially true for less experienced anglers or others that might accidentally provide too much slack and the fish can slip off a barbless hook easier. Some hooks are also manufactured without a barb and they're referred to as barbless, but as shown in the lower picture on our slideshow, a barbed hook can meet the definition of barbless if the barb is simply bent down to contact the shank of the hook, which can be done with a pair of pliers. And that's probably the most common version of a barbless hook that's currently being used right now. The most obvious benefit of a barbless hook is that fish can generally be released easier and quicker. Next slide. This slide's a little long, but it's on the background related to barbless hooks, and I thought it was important. So prior to 2013, the required use of barbless hooks in the main stem Columbia River salmon fisheries was limited to the buoy 10 fishery during about 6 years in the 1980s and 90s. And then in 2012, a fishery management work group was formed, and that was to advise the Commission on recommended changes to Columbia River fisheries. And one of their recommendations was to implement in 2013 the use of barbless hooks in all main stem Columbia River and tributary salmon and steelhead fisheries. And that was based on an expectation at that time during the allocation changes resulting from that harvest reform plan, that the assumption was that allocation would be shifted to recreational fisheries and then they would handle and release more wild fish, and the assumption was barbless hooks would be beneficial. Excuse me. The Oregon and Washington Fishing commissions then adopted that barbless hook requirement in both states effective in January of 13. And they took these independent but matching actions since the two states jointly manage fisheries in the Columbia, and it's important to try and maintain concurrent regulations. In Oregon, the barbless hook requirement not only applied to the main stem Columbia, but also the lower Willamette River and the select area recreational fisheries, which are some side channel areas in the lower Columbia. But in 2017, the commission voted again to rescind the barbless requirement for the lower Willamette and those select area fisheries. And that was based on a staff presentation and a position that we felt there was a relatively low proportion of wild fish in those areas, so barbed hooks would be okay. And then the need for barbless hooks in the main stem Columbia was again came up in February of 2019 when we had a joint state fishery policy review committee that consisted of several commissioners from Oregon and Washington, and they were looking at the performance of the policies in both states. And they recommended shifting back to a voluntary use of barbless, which means barbed would be allowed no later than June of 2019. And I'll skip some details that we included in our report, but that resulted in the allowance of barbed hooks in the main stem Columbia from June through late November 2019. But the Oregon Commission did not act to permanently adopt that regulation change, so the rules reverted back at that time, and it's basically been barbless hooks since then. Next slide. So a little bit on Columbia River fisheries. The system and its fisheries are very complicated due to multiple species and stocks of mixed hatchery and natural origin fish, which are commingled in time and area, and it results in a very complex fisheries management structure. We have 13 ESA listed salmon and steelhead stocks, but the system also supports a very robust hatchery programs to help support harvest opportunity. The average run over the last 10 years, salmon and steelhead combined, is about 2 million fish. And among other objectives, the fisheries are managed annually to not exceed the established ESA take limits, which is basically the percent of the run for that stock that can be killed directly or indirectly through fisheries. So in order to maximize our harvest opportunity, given all those constraints, we've developed a lot of mark selective fisheries where only hatchery fish can be retained. And those have been implemented for a variety of species and seasons, although we do have full retention in some parts of the fall fishery for Chinook. And this management approach results in significant numbers of salmon and steelhead being released, which we'll cover in the next slide. The Columbia is also unique in that the non-treaty fisheries are managed jointly by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, since that river forms the boundary between the states. And as I touched on earlier, this joint management is needed to maintain orderly fisheries, which is generally requires concurrent regulations in the two states so that recreational boat anglers can fish on either side of the river without having to worry about what if they cross the state line and then have different regulations. So that also helps with enforcement, because then enforcement officers can enforce the whole river rather than being just on one side or the other. And so next slide. So this table summarizes which of our recreational salmon and steelhead fisheries in the Columbia are managed under mark selective regulations, and the average number of adult fish released in each of those fisheries over the last 8 years or so. For Chinook, our spring and summer fisheries are fully mark selective, but for fall Chinook, like I mentioned, we have a mix of mark select and non-mark select. So there are significant fisheries where we're retaining hatchery and wild fish at the same time. And recreational fisheries for coho and steelhead are virtually all mark selective, and sockeye fisheries are not. And as you can see in the numbers we highlighted in red, the majority of the releases occur in the fall for fall Chinook and coho, and that's also when water temperatures are highest. So the average annual release over the last 8 years is almost 44,500 fish. So there's a significant number of fish that we are handling and releasing, and that includes both marked and unmarked fish that anglers either couldn't or chose not to retain. And so to account for the delayed mortality of those released fish, we have a variety of species and season-specific mortality rates that are used and applied to those released fish. And that's to, we don't assume all the fish live at release. We apply this delayed mortality. And so most of the rates are static regardless of the hook type. Except in the fall where that release mortality rate drops from 21% to 19% when barbless hooks are required for Chinook and coho. And next slide. And so as previously mentioned, our Columbia River fisheries are actively managed to remain within those federally mandated sideboards, or more specifically, the take limits that were are approved for our fisheries, and that applies to a variety of ESA listed stocks. But for some stocks, we also have limits on the total catch, whether it's hatchery or wild, and that would be an example of that would be Upriver Bright Fall Chinook, which is a major component of our fall run. And in that case, non-treaty fisheries are limited to a maximum harvest rate of 15%, regardless of the origin of the fish. And so these sideboards function to limit the overall impact of the fisheries, but there are several factors that determine how rapidly you reach those management limits within a given season, and that's what Tucker's going to cover. A couple of particular importance for today's discussion are the hook type, our discussion on hook type. Two factors that are important are the landing rate, which is the number of fish you bring to the boat or bank, the proportion, if you will, of how many you hook, right? And then the release mortality rate. And generally speaking, the lower your landing rate and the lower your release mortality rate, the longer your fishing season will be. But landing rate is probably is the most powerful or most impactful of those two factors. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tucker.
Maybe I'll bring the microphone down. You can hear me better. Well-known soft talker. Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, members of the commission, Director Colbert. Again, for the record, I am Tucker Jones, Ocean Salmon and Columbia River Program Manager. And I guess I'm going to take the presentation from here. So yes, based on the information we have, landing rates do appear to differ between barbed and barbless hooks. In the table we're looking at here, we're looking at a couple different pieces of information. One is a study from the Cowlitz River, and one is some unpublished information we have from in the lower river, ODFW. Yeah, we know that, that Cowlitz River information may not be necessarily 100% comparable to our rates. It's in a terminal fishery, but, it is some of the better information we have. We know that for, barbless hooks, those landing rates range from about 60% to about 80%. And for barbed hooks, those range from, 6 to about 15% higher. And then, that unpublished data that we have for combined Chinook and coho generally is in the same ballpark, about 13% higher for barbed hooks. Generally, anglers are going to lose fish regardless of whether or not they use barbs or barbless hooks, but they'll land conservatively, about 10% more fish using a barbed hook if we sort of combine all of that information. Oh, did you go? This is a little bit out of, I think we have the wrong presentation up.
Which one you?
Oh, this is way out of order.
Okay. Which slide is it?
I think it's supposed to be literature review next.
Yeah,
Just forward and see if it's.
we'll just go one more ahead. There we go.
go.
All right. So what does the science tell us about release mortality rates? Well, surprisingly, there isn't much out there on this topic. And in the studies we do have on barbed versus barbless hooks, the effects on adult salmonids, it's not exactly conclusive. That study on the Cowlitz River that we looked at earlier, they did find some association between barbed and barbless hooks, but the difference wasn't very large. There was a study in British Columbia on winter steelhead that did find a higher mortality rate for fish caught on barbed hooks versus barbless that were released. There was a famous, sorry, and often misquoted study on the survival of released spring chinook in the Willamette River that found large differences in release mortality rate depending on where the fish was hooked. But importantly, the Toman study or the Lindsay study, it did not evaluate barbless hooks. All the hooks used in that study were barbed hooks. And then an early literature review of barbed hook studies found that barbed hooks may increase handling time and potentially stress in fish. Generally speaking, though, across all the studies, the most important factors regarding the survival of released fish were where the fish was hooked, how the fish was handled, how long fish were out of water, and the water temperature that fish were hooked in. Now we're going to go back the other direction, please, yeah, thank you. So these things combined, right, landing rate and release mortality will have an impact on season lengths if we make a change in our hook regulations. As I know you're all aware, fisheries in the river are really complex. With multiple, especially if we think about fall, right, with multiple potential limiting stocks. But if I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can, I guess. For an example, and if we think about 2025, upriver bright fall chinook that John talked about a little bit earlier in 2025 were a limiting stock for non-treaty recreational fisheries. Unlike hydro or habitat impacts, we scale our impacts in fisheries depending on run size, right? And in 2025, upriver bright fall chinook were at an abundance level that we had that 15% impact available. If they'd have been lower, we'd have used a lower impact rate for those fish. So in 2025, we had an impact rate available of 15%. For recreational fisheries based on Columbia River policy, right now, we assign no more than 70% of the limiting stock to recreational fisheries, and we assign no more or no less than 30% of the limiting stock to commercial fisheries. So using our barbless hook assumptions, right, in our preseason planning process, we modeled out fisheries that assigned the full recreational share of that limiting stock. So 10.5% so 70% of 15% is 10.5%. That's the allowable there using those barbless hook allowance, right? And that gave us what we had for 2025 for our fisheries. That had a mix of non-mark select fishing and mark select fishing in buoy 10 that got us through Labor Day. And that got us fisheries downstream of Bonneville that went through or a little bit past mid-September as well as through buoy 10. And importantly, it got us fisheries that did not have any emergency closures, right? And that were well received, generally speaking. Now, if we had had barbed hooks, right, and assuming a 21% release mortality rate, because we lose that 19%, we lose that 2% credit, and more importantly, if thinking about that landing rate thing, a 10% higher landing probability, We think those same planned preseason fisheries would have used 11.6, 77%, or 110% of what would have been allowed for the recreational fishery. Now, that's a lot more. Now, what would have that meant for fisheries? I can't tell you exactly because those fisheries are really complex, right? It is a giant puzzle when we're doing that preseason planning process where we're trying to fit, a mix, again, of non-mark, mark select, a season length here, a season length there. It's a really complex, that is 10% more. So that's not a day, right? It's a lot. And also, right, when we've done surveys on this, and we haven't asked specifically about a barbed hook, but what we have asked about it are what are some of the most important things. And I will tell you, what we've heard time and again from anglers is that stability and predictability are one of, if not the most important things to anglers, especially for fall fisheries. And so if we, and all of our current fishery planning models have these barbless hook assumptions in them. And so if we don't have these right now, we'll have to probably build in additional conservative cushions into our season structures to hedge against emergency closures, likely sort of further shortening our seasons, at least until our models can catch up, because we don't have that information right now. Okay, next. What? Yes. Okay, sort of switching gears just a little bit. How has this regulation performed over time? I think, the regulation, as we've heard, I think has mixed sort of popularity, but how has it performed over time? Although it does have mixed support, the compliance with the regulation has been pretty good. In this table, we have data from our Oregon State Police partners showing the number of angler contacts and resulting warnings and/or citations for both the main stem Columbia River and the ocean, where barbless hooks have been required since 1984. And if we look at the two compliance rate columns, we can see that nearly 95% of anglers are complying with the barbless hook regulation between 2022 and 2025. So, really similar compliance rates for both of these areas. One where the regulation has not been in that place that long, and one where it's been in place for a much longer time. Yeah. Thanks. Now we're going to skip ahead to, yeah. All right, circling back to sort of one of those original questions on the pros and cons of each hook type. I think we can probably safe to say that barbed hooks will result in fewer lost fish and likely greater angler satisfaction. Also, since other adjacent tributary fisheries, at least in Oregon, allow barbed hooks, rescinding the barbless requirement for the main stem would allow anglers to use the same gear in different fisheries, which could save time and money, and it might be one less thing to worry about. However, if anglers do land more fish, then more fish will be handled, which will result in more fish being kept in release, likely resulting in reduced season length. Unfortunately, we can only speculate by how much, because our fishery models are currently are all based on barbless hook data. And so there is potential we would underestimate the catch until our models can be updated. Again, that injects instability into the fishing season, making us less able to accurately predict season length and increasing the likelihood of emergency closures, at least in the near term. Another thing, I think, potentially impacting season length is that we would lose that 2% credit in the fall, and we'll go back to the 21% rate established in 2012 prior to the implementation of the barbless hook regulation. When I think another consideration when considering the voluntary barbless hook, we would need to remember the need for concurrent regulations with Washington. If the two states had a differing hook regulation, it would be extremely difficult for anglers and enforcement due to the fluid nature of identifying borders in the rivers. So if a regulation change was considered, it would definitely need to be coordinated with Washington. Next. So I guess in summary, barbless hooks have mostly been required since 2013. Most of the main stem Columbia River fisheries, recreational salmon and steelhead fisheries are mark selective. There's limited research on barbed versus barbless hooks for release mortality research. Generally speaking, it's hook location, fish handling, and water temperature that we think are more important rather than barbed versus barbless for those release mortality rates. Compliance rates with the barbless hook regulation are high. Changing a regulation will likely have impacts on season lengths and stabilities. And rescinding the barbless hook regulation would definitely require coordination with Washington. I guess just additionally, letting you guys know, the agency is currently managing a number of high priority issues right now, and staff capacity to take on additional regulatory processes, especially within my program, is limited right now. Transitioning to barb hooks could lead to a reduction in fishery days, which might be, receive mixed results or opinions within the fishing community among stakeholders. And any change to the barbless hook rule is going to require close coordination with the state of Washington, and at least based on some of my initial conversations on this, I'm not sure this issue could be addressed independently of other components within Columbia River fisheries form. So with that, I'm happy, and I'm sure John is happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Thank you. Probably isn't a big surprise. There are a few questions. So Commissioner Muldall, and then Commissioner Spellbrink, and then Commissioner Labhart.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Thank you for your presentation. If you could just provide perhaps new commissioners a little more context and take us back to 2019 when the commission then decided not to extend barbed policy. Can you explain, or do you recall why, what the justification was at the time?
Chair Wall, Commissioner Muldall, it was a very, there's a long history in the last 10, 15 years on Columbia River policy, and the states have kind of gone back and forth depending on the buildup of the commission. And then, it's kind of ping pong back and forth. That's why we put that slide in there, was to try, it's a little hard to capture all of it in one slide. But I think at that time in 2019, when the advisory group had suggested going back to voluntary barbless, the two states trying to align. Oregon went along with Washington. We adopted a temp rule. There's a 6-month limit on the temp rule. So when we adopted it in June, it was only had 180 days to go. And then we came back in August of that year with, as part of our annual reg packet, we were going to use that process to make the our request that the barbed be allowed. And the vote at that day leaned towards not rescinding it. And I think it was based on the assumption that barbless hooks help with conservation. Maybe more of a feeling, right? Or a lean, or a why not? But anyway, I think that's what it was.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spellbrink.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wall. I guess first I'll put my recreational fisherman hat on. and I personally like the idea of making barbless hooks optional, and especially in the non-mark select fisheries where you're not, you don't have to throw back all the the non-fin clip fish. And I see the one proposal that came from CCA had that proposal written into it. They were talking about the fall fishery down there, the Bowie 10 fishery, that lower river fishery where you have to release wild fish. I think their proposal was to leave that in force on that lower end, and only in the fall fishery, fall Chinook fishery would be upriver where retention, and when retention is allowed of wild fish. And so that would probably help on that bottom end, I would guess. You know, I've fished for 60 years and guided for 30 years, and we've handled thousands of fish. I can back that up with evidence, you know, and they're really the only fishery that I partook in through that time was we used to go up to Canada every year and fish there on the Skeena River out of Terrace, BC, where it was all, you did a lot of catch and release. You could retain like one fish a day and only a few a year. But so you released an awful lot of fish, and we used barbless hooks up there. And I can tell you from my personal experience that I don't think it made any difference as far as mortality, because it was, you know, if it's like it says, like your presentation says here, it's handling where the fish is hooked and maybe warm water. And I'm sure warm water has a lot of problems because you handle the fish too much in warm water and they do not survive. But what I saw is, I mean, again, it's how much experience the fisherman has, because, you know, someone that really doesn't have the experience in releasing fish can, I think their mortality rate probably doubles, triples from what the experienced fisherman is. Personally, you know, we see a fish that's hooked deep, we just cut the line. The minute you get close to the fish, you just cut the line, you know, just above the hook, and the fish goes away. You don't roll them in the net, you don't pull them ashore, you don't do any of that stuff. And I have some suggestions if this would go, you know, go further, where the petition comes and we, you know, they talk to Washington and get some concurrence. And anyway, if this proceeds, I'd have some recommendations on handling that I think would probably help mortality and handling. But I guess we, you know, like I say, we need to take this back to the recreational fleet, see if the trade-offs that happen might be acceptable. Need to consult with Washington. But from my personal experience, like I say, I would have some suggestions on handling that would reduce the handling time if we do go further with this. But I guess that's what I have to say about that.
We'll go to Commissioner Labarge. Let me just make one comment for the benefit, especially of the two new commissioners. The commission hears either agenda items or informational items that are also on the agenda, but some of them, we hear them, then we get testimony, then we ask questions, then we generally move into kind of a sense of the commission and where we are. This one is a little bit, it sounds like Commissioner Spellbrink has talked about it, a sense, and I just want people to know you will get a chance to ask your questions, and we will have a chance for people to give a sense of where they are on this. This is an informational item, and so we don't need to make a decision on barbless today. We need to hear this important information, and it would be useful to get questions all answered and a sense of the commission. So just as background, let's go to Commissioner Labhart
I
then.
don't have any question, I have more of a sense. So I give that now or wait?
Let's see if are there any other just flat out questions? Then I think we might be at the part where people can give a sense of where they're landing since we're there.
Okay, thank you, Chair Wall. So in the 6 years I've been on the commission, there's not many times that I can think of where I've lost sleep over issues. And we've had some really tough issues, and I've actually lost some sleep over this one. So it tells you where I'm kind of coming from with this. I'm taking it pretty serious. So first of all, I want to say I have a huge amount of respect for Tucker and John. They are two smart people. I listen to them a lot. In fact, John and I've had several conversations about this issue, and I appreciate his philosophy, his thinking, his analysis, his opinions, all those kind of things. So I want to extend my appreciation to the department staff today for today's informational briefing, and to many constituents who took the time out of their busy schedules to provide this public comment earlier today. Your engagement is invaluable. I believe it is especially important for our new commissioners to learn about this emerging issue. Several years ago, I came across a quote that still resonates. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced, unquote. This commission and the department have a long-standing commitment to facing change head-on when Oregonians bring forward concerns about fish and wildlife management. Time and again, we have demonstrated a willingness to listen, truly listen, and seek first to understand, and then to respond thoughtfully. That is what today's informational briefing is intended to support, in my opinion. Over the years, this commission has addressed a wide range of issues brought forward by our constituents. A few examples include listening and responding to wolf depredation concerns from landowners. We did this by implementing a course correction on our approach to working with livestock producers on wolf livestock conflicts, acting on invasive species raised by anglers in Diamond Lake, addressing pinniped depredation affecting ESA-listed fish at Willamette Falls and Bonneville Dam in collaboration with NOAA, recreational, tribal, commercial interests, and our Washington partners. Responding to excess cougar depredation on threatened bighorn sheep in southeast Oregon. Expanding two-rod endorsement when strong fish runs supported it. Implementing adaptive management to open fisheries for certain strong ESA-listed wild coho runs where appropriate. Addressing cormorant and bass depredation on migrating smolts. Responding to elk damage on private lands through emergency hunts. Adjusting regulations in response to both declining and unexpectedly strong fish runs to ensure responsible science-based adaptive management. In every case, our approach has been rooted in listening to the license holders, to our tribal partners, to landowners, to the scientific community, and the broader public. And we have acted in accordance with our mission to protect and enhance fish and wildlife and their habitats to benefit both present and future generations. We carry out this mission through sound, proactive, and solution-oriented management. Today, we face an issue raised by numerous Oregonians, the implementation of the mandatory barbless hook on the Columbia River. In response, we've asked the department to provide this educational briefing so that we may first understand the issues more fully. The comments we have received through testimony, emails, and phone calls raise several questions about whether the commission should revisit the barbless hook requirement. First one, enforcement trends. That the chart that they showed, warning and citations have increased each year since the implementation, rising from 123, and enforcement action is either a warning or a citation. Enforcement actions have increased from 123 in 2022 to 354 in 2025, a threefold increase with no additional troopers. Some commenters believe that certain frustrated anglers may knowingly be risking violations in belief that they won't get caught. Even so, as John, or maybe it was Tucker, mentioned, the compliance rate is still very high, 96% from 2022 through 2025. So it's kind of like, huh? Got a good compliance rate, but yet we still are having significant increase, threefold increase in enforcement actions. Second, concern from anglers and guides. Guides report that novice anglers lose more fish using barbless hooks due to the learning curve. Some guides also say they need to spend more time on the water to secure a marked hatchery fish for clients, resulting in additional catch and release encounters. This raises questions about whether the barbless hook rules may influence post-release mortality. Hatchery management considerations. The department produces clipped hatchery fish in part to mitigate the impacts of the dams in an attempt that they will be caught and reduce competition on wild fish spawning grounds. Harvesting hatchery fish is encouraged, while wild unclipped must be released safely and humanely. Another quote that comes to mind that I use every once in a while, be silent if you choose, but when it is necessary, speak, and speak in such a way that people will remember it, unquote. So I hope today's briefing is one we will remember and that we will not remain silent when it comes time to respond to our constituents. The science on this topic, as John said, is mixed. Peer-reviewed studies reach different conclusions depending on the species, gear, hook location, the river, the tributary examined. Historically, both Oregon and Washington have modified their barbless hooks policy multiple times in response to involving science, social considerations, management priorities. Some examples include 2010 to 2012, Washington adopted a barbless hook rule. Oregon did not, resulting in non-concurrent regulations. 2013, Oregon adopted a barbless hook rule for the Columbia and select tributaries, restoring concurrence. 2015, 2017, Oregon rescinded its barbless hook requirement in areas with low wild fish presence. 2017 to 2019, Washington shifted toward voluntary barbless hooks in use in some areas. Oregon aligned temporarily before implementing rules that were again out of concurrence. 2020, both states returned to requiring barbless hooks for salmon and steelhead to maintain consistent regulations on the Columbia. Each of these decisions, sometimes moving back and forth, was shaped by work groups, staff analysis, scientific literature, stakeholder input, and policy considerations. Each had valid rationale at that time, and there was staff that sat at the table and explained the science and the rationale for this way and this way. This ongoing discussion highlights the complexities of fisheries, as Tucker mentioned, highlights the complexity of fisheries management, federal and state laws, science, angler experience, and enforcement realities and policy where they intersect. As we consider the perspective of both the scientific community and those who spend countless hours on the river, we must strive to prioritize effective species of conservation concern with practical, equitable recreation opportunities with adaptive management. Ultimately, the Oregon policy decisions rest with this commission and hopeful concurrence with Washington. Yes, it requires a workload for staff who are significantly already overworked, and I understand that. I'm not sure where we are in a hurry here, but also not just punt either. An idea to consider might be to reach out to our Washington partners and see if they have an interest in forming a future work group as an essential first step in seeking first to understand whether a different collaborative, consistent approach is achievable. My hope is that we do not let this issue drift, sorry for the pun, not let this issue drift, that we do in fact be thoughtful and responsible and respond, whatever that eventual action might be, as our constituents have asked us to do. Thank you, Chair Wall, and again, thank you everyone who has contributed to this important discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Labhart. Commissioner Hatfield-Hyde.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the comments from Commissioner Labhart and Commissioner Spellbrink. I've been rolling this around in my head, and I think, to me, it appears like, you know, we can go down this this path, and as was presented, we could reduce opportunity, which is a trade-off that doesn't seem too great to me. But I think the bigger concern I have and the question I have is not, it's not really the barbed versus no barbed, you know, is issue as much as it is this the right time in any way to, I think one of the people that testified this morning from CCAA, maybe to step into what could be a political nightmare, which is be careful what you wish for. Are we in a place where we want to be engaging with Washington on issues right now? And do we have the time to do that? And what is the slippery slope that we get ourselves into? And I don't know, I want to be thoughtful because we completely value our partner commission in Washington, but I know just enough about this to be a little worried. And so I don't know if you guys want to comment on that, or Director Colbert would like to comment on that a little bit. I feel like we pull a string and then what might unravel that goes far beyond barbed and barbless hooks. And are we ready for that big effort right now at this season in time? And do it in a nice way because we love Washington. It's not about not loving Washington. It's just,
Well, then I
Choo, choo.
comment. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I really appreciate the struggle that I hear from all of you because I feel the same way. I mean, this is a struggle and I do listen to folks. I will say when I hear the words work group, I especially, for me, that's a kind of a red flag because it was a work group that did the Columbia River reform. And so that really feels like pulling on a string versus a very selective conversation. So that's a little bit of a red flag for me. We really don't know. To be completely honest with you, we don't know whether this can be something you can peel off as a single issue or if it is pulling on a string. I think that would take further conversations with Washington to know what risk we are opening up. I think Tucker may have at least gotten an initial sense, and I would welcome, if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, maybe Tucker, you can speak very informally to initial conversations with Washington.
go ahead.
Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Director Colbert, members of the commission. I try to be very careful when I speak for Washington and other things, but yeah, these issues, whether they should or should not be connected to, reform issues are not for me to necessarily say, but based on sort of informal discussions I have had, I think that there's a real likelihood that they will be connected. Or not, I just think it's not easy to peel issues in the Columbia off, right? Everything is a little sticky, and that's not to say that it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible, but things are always, in my opinion, seem to be a little sticky.
Just mention, again, like this is really wading into the stickiness. But there are places that we are not in concurrence in terms of splits that I would be really worried about going, like, if there were any kind of reaction of like, sure, you can have this, but we want that. I mean, that really gets us into Columbia River reform and I think takes us in a place that I don't think that our state is interested. And so it's not that I'm saying barbless. I'm just saying I'm worried about how we do this. I mean, if the commission wants us to continue to pursue conversations, I feel very supportive of that. But I want to be cautious about how we do it. So that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I do have one more follow-up on this, which is we do, this morning we went through like, what are the primary, drivers the commission is focusing on right now: landscape scale restoration, climate change, listening to all Oregonians kind of a thing. And I guess I feel like if we wanted to be really deliberate at some point to go back into conversations with Washington, I think we just need to be really thoughtful of staff time when we would even want to do that and whether or not what issues get pulled into that. Like either be really intentional and do it right, or just be very thoughtful and careful right now. I think that's where I hit, because I don't know how staff, we think it's like a simple little issue, and I wish it was, because I don't think it's that in itself that big of an issue. It's the string that I don't trust.
We have two people who clearly want to respond, and then I do have a couple comments. So go ahead, Commissioner Spellberg.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wall. Yeah, I actually like that description, pursue conversations. Like I say, we're not here to make a decision, but like I say, we're always open to keep talking about it.
Commissioner Lavhart?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I wasn't wedded to a work group. You know, I believe there's a solution to every problem. We just got to find it. And so it's just to work the issues, and I'm totally supportive of having a conversation. I just was throwing out, because that's usually what we do, is we form a work group. So we don't have to form a work group, but maybe have a conversation. I did have a conversation. Jim Anderson, who's chair of the commission, is a good friend of mine. So I wanted to give him a heads up that we were going to discuss this. And so he was very appreciative of that. He was letting the commission know, and their director. So they are very aware that we're having this discussion. And he didn't make any commitments anyway. So don't try to read anything into our conversation, because he said, thank you for letting us know. So, you know, and you know, there's a statement that the staff makes. I want to make sure I read this. Current staff commitments to the USV Oregon Pacific Salmon Treaty and hydropower related obligations, litigation, taking on rulemaking for barbless hooks at this time would significantly strain available resources and present considerable workload challenge. I hear you. And I think this commission hears you. You got a lot of workload, got a lot of things to do. And so I don't want this to take away from really high level important discussions that are going on. But maybe a conversation is worth having with our Washington folks to see if in fact there is some kind of a solution. And I don't want to try to, because I think there is some options out there. And I don't want to try to debate those now, because that's not what this is about, but have some kind of where, you know, we can find the pony in the room of working things off channel, or, you know, certain time frames, or how many days, you know, don't go there. But just try to see if there is some kind of because we've done it before with the state of Washington when we went to Barb. We've done it before when we didn't go to Barb, but we had good reasons to do that. So I'm totally supportive of if we want to just have a conversation with Washington and see where it goes, and staff would have to decide, but Mike would have to decide when that conversation would occur, if it occurs. So.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I think, to me, it's really important that we stay in our lane as commissioners on this. And I think it's very important that if we just have conversations or sort of feel this out over time, can have conversations, that it's really clear that that's coming from the department, not from the commission.
Good point.
I think it's very confusing if we as individual commissioners start approaching other commissions in other states. I think it sends a very confusing message.
That I was proposing.
Okay, good.
No, this would be the department.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just saying that I want to make sure
Oh,
that
okay.
we don't do
Yeah, I
that.
wasn't proposing that at all.
Because, yeah, good.
No,
I didn't think you were. I'm just trying to
give a heads up.
I'm trying to put a little form around this, and it
Yep.
would be, you know, I don't know, Director Colbert, I think you would have the best insight about what that looks like and timing with staff on this issue, with the department. And I think you guys can kind of read the room about whether things are a good time to talk about things or not, because you're looking at you're looking at the full menu, right? And if you're Tucker, you've got 50 million, both of you, 50 million fish runs and things going on, right? The full enchilada. Let's just be cool with it and make sure it comes from the department if we decide that there's a sense that we want to consider this in a casual way that does not create further drama. How's that for clear as mud? Not clear?
Chair Wall, I just wanted to make sure you saw that Commissioner Hall.
Yeah,
agrees
we're
better.
going
Okay.
there next. Thank you, Tucker. Commissioner DeFreeze.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, I'm, I'm hoping my comments aren't, yeah, like Commissioner Hatfield-Hyde said, am I muddying the water more, or is this clear? But I think one thing that I just want to vocalize is I think the conversation is really good. I believe I'm on the same page as kind of the other commissioners who have spoken as we want to continue this conversation carefully and strategically and stuff. I think the only thing I also just want to vocalize is that I can sympathize with the folks like those that we heard through this morning, that even though barbless hooks may not be a simple issue, it's a more simple issue than what really we're talking about now. And, you know, like I just have a vision of trying to cross a ditch and then realizing that both of my boots are stuck, you know, and that's kind of where we're at now. So I think what I'm trying to say is I want those folks that we heard, you know, our constituents, to know that we heard them and that we are having this conversation because we heard them and we want to go forward with the issues that they brought forward. And I'm sorry, I apologize for the fact that this issue isn't as simple as it seems, you know, potentially to be. So I just, and with that in mind, you know, kind of Director, I would be interested to hear what is it where what is a reasonable timeline when we as commissioners would be updated on this? Or, you know, is there a trigger point in which, you know, this will be revisited in a more formal manner with some of the behind the scenes work that the department is doing?
Thank you, Commissioner Hall DeFreeze. Let me make a couple comments and then we'll go ahead and turn to the director to answer your question about timeline. We've been involved for a lot of years with this issue and it's gone back and forth multiple times. I'm really glad, Commissioner Hall DeFreeze, that you brought up the issue about the people involved, because this has gone back and forth so many times. One of the things I appreciate about being on this commission and always have is that people actually listen and think about what they're hearing. And with this one having gone back and forth, there are some very deeply held views and impacts to people. They're directly impacted by these decisions. So it's not a light thing. It's an important issue. I don't think that I've seen a case with Columbia River issues where one's simple. I don't know how to pull out a single issue in the Columbia River discussion and have it not be attached to 6 other issues that are important too. And the one that I think the mortality issue is important, the opportunity issue is huge. There are concerns and requests from anglers that we would never ignore. The two maybe, but one of them that comes the top of my list is, we always talk about workload, but in this case, it's a very, very big deal, and it's immediately now a big deal, and it's going to go on for a while with the hydro piece, the PST piece, the USV Oregon, and just trying. I mean, that's not even trying to keep the seasons in place and the allocations and that sort of thing. So I think that there's no simple issue, and important as any of these are, there's no way to pull it out and just do that one. I appreciate, if we need to do it, that we do a casual check-in with Washington and that sort of thing, but we've done some of that, and we've certainly done a lot of it over the years. And the one other piece that I do want to mention is the broader context. These Columbia River issues are important in that context, and I almost hate to even think about one out of that context, because there's no way to have an out of context conversation that I know of about the Columbia. So this is an important issue. I think that it's just not the time to take it on and try to make it a simple issue out of context. So that's where I end up. Let's go ahead then, if you will, Director, answer that question if you can.
So, I have firsthand experience of, on the Columbia management of, saying, can't we just do X? And that's why they're laughing, because I do that to them on a regular basis. I really, like, we can't just do, what? So I really, I want to just say that I hear everything y'all are saying is like, on the one hand, I would like to leave with a little bit of trust that we would like to continue to have this conversation. And I know that's asking a lot because this is important to folks, right? I am interested in having those informal conversations. In fact, John and I are scheduled to, we're going up to Olympia, hopefully in December. So within a couple weeks, to have some of these informal conversations with our counterparts in Washington. Your eyes just got big, John. You know that I was working on that. He's nervous. So in terms of a timeline, because again, I'm asking you to say, hey, could you give us a chance to continue to have these conversations? Because they do have like some bigger implications and there are other things happening concurrently on stuff. I would like to not have it happen before the end of the year. Because I really want Tucker to take some time off for the holidays. And I'm already worried about that right now with the litigation that we are deeply involved in terms of the hydro. I don't actually think that Tucker is going to take any time off. And I'm not just making that up. I'm really worried, right? And that is a priority. That is a priority. And it's like, this is that balancing act. So I guess I would like to continue to have these conversations. I am listening. I know it's important. I just want to make sure that we have the conversations in a way that we are very aware of kind of the trade-offs and the risks. And maybe there's even some other wins, right? Like if we have the conversation right, maybe there's some good things for Washington, some good things for us. I don't know. We'll see. But I would like to pursue it, and I am listening. And I would like to work with our folks here to kind of continue and maybe circle back with you with some updates and some kind of progress, if that seems reasonable for you.
I think, yeah, and I think we do need to get more sense of the commission, and I appreciate the way you framed that. I think that it was a good way to put it together. So let's get a bit more of the sense, and then we need to move on to some other issues soon.
Thanks, Chairman. That's exactly what I was going to ask is, can we just get a sense of the commission? Because I support what the director is proposing, so.
Then can we hear from, go ahead.
I really support that. And I'm not thinking in a 1 month timeframe. I'm thinking in a next year timeframe as it comes naturally through communications on a variety of issues. You know.
Other commissioners who want, it looks like Commissioner DeFreeze, are you trying to weigh in? I can't see your thumbs up or your hand
No,
up.
I was just agreeing, and please, Tucker, take some time off.
I think there's a vote on you, Tucker. I would support that, though I do like the amendment to your framing that Commissioner Hatfield Hyde said, which is by the end of December seems too short, just based on my experience with what I've seen people do in the Columbia. It takes a long time just to make these conversations happen. So I think that would work. Any other comments? You're okay. New commissioners are wondering why you signed up in the first place.
I mean, as far as any other comments, I support what Director Colbert was suggesting. I mean, I will say that, you know, initially in looking over the background materials and hearing from folks about this topic, I thought, well, yeah, let's go ahead and get some further information together and kind of keep this ball rolling. It occurs to me that as we talk about the priorities for this commission going forward, and we're talking about things like landscape level conservation, you know, that's about thinking about the comprehensive issue. And we are kind of pulling one little piece out of a much bigger and extremely complex, comprehensive issue when we talk about just this piece. So I could easily see that it would open doors to a much bigger ball of wax here. If that is possible, not to do that through, getting some sense from Washington, that's wonderful. So that seems like a legitimate next step.
Thank you. I think we're. Go ahead.
Just real briefly, thank you, Chair Wall. I'm aligned with the director's recommendation. It seems entirely reasonable. I'm worried about the Pandora's box or the pulling on the strings analogy, as you said. So I'm interested in more information, but very cognizant of the demands and the timing of this decision. So I'm aligned with the director's comments.
Thank you. I think that we can close there and we know where we're headed. Okay with that?
And we will continue to keep you posted. And we have already had a lot of conversations about the interest in this and met with folks about this, and we'll continue to do that as well. So.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
And
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
to everybody who spent time on this today. I think then we'll move to item B, Exhibit B, and Lynn is already on her way up. So let's do that one. And then we have two more after this.
So what I'm doing is I hit share screen.
Okay.
I select this.
Lynn to take us to Exhibit B. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Excuse us. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Lynn, go ahead. Introduce yourself if you will and take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Commissioners, and Director Colbert. Do want a special welcome to our two new commissioners. I had a quip about being the one who gets to break in new commissioners when I was at Exhibit B, because I was Exhibit B last December with Commissioner Hall DeFries. But you've gotten some other items before me today. My name is Lynn Mattis. I am the Marine Fisheries Management Section Manager with ODFW's Marine Resources Program based in Newport. And I'm here today to provide you a very brief update on the 2024 Commercial and Nearshore Fishery Report, and then to talk to you about the 2026 Commercial and Recreational Groundfish Fisheries. So first off, to meet the statutory requirements of ORS 508.953, Attachment 4 is the annual report on the commercial nearshore fishery, including information on logbook compliance. This report is informational, there is no commission action, and staff can be available if you all have questions later. So to the meat of the agenda item, this agenda item is the 2026 groundfish regulations, which will require commission action. This is broken out into 4 parts. A reminder of the already adopted 2025 and 2026 federal regulations setting harvest limits, adopting 2026 harvest guidelines for several species, adopting commercial fishery management measures, and adopting recreational fishery management measures. With the significant decrease to black rockfish federal catch limits and the resulting state harvest guidelines beginning in 2025 and continuing into 2026, which were based on a 2023 stock assessment, and the need for regulation changes to stay within those lower allocations, ODFW staff started reaching out to commercial and recreational fishery participants and associated businesses, starting in the late summer of 2023 and continuing into the fall of this year. This slide gives you an outline of all of the places staff have been interacting with public and industry. So as a reminder, federal annual catch limits, or ACLs, and associated federal regulations are developed by the Pacific Fishery Management Council. ODFW has a seat on that is technically held by Director Colbert, but I am the director's designee for most groundfish things and a few other items. We also have staff that represent the agency on advisory bodies, including management teams, scientific teams, and technical teams. And there are also industry and scientific expert advisory bodies that provide guidance to the council. The biennial limits are set during a 2-year process with multiple opportunities and venues for public participation. And just an idea on our documentation in that federal process, the document to adopt all of these rules was over 500 pages this last cycle. The federal ACLs for 2 key species were reduced significantly beginning in 2025 based on the results of what we call full benchmark stock assessments that were conducted in 2023. While black rockfish off Oregon are considered to be in the healthy zone, the overall scale of the biomass is lower than it was projected from previous assessments. Canary rockfish are in what we call the precautionary zone, because similar to black rockfish, the overall scale of the biomass is lower than in previous assessments. The results of these assessments created a reduction in the ACL for black rockfish off of Oregon was reduced by 33% from 2024 to 2025 and then into 2026. Canary rockfish, the coast-wide ACL was decreased by 55%, and the Oregon recreational share was decreased by 58%. There's a slight difference in those numbers due to some off-the-top deductions. Now, the Commission adopted these limits for both 2025 and 2026 in your actions last December, and no action is needed at this time. But we just wanted to remind you of the main federal rule that is influencing 25 and 26. So once we adopt the federal rules, the next step in our management process is distributing those federal catch limits for Oregon for a number of species or species groups to the commercial and recreational sectors as harvest guidelines for each sector. I do want to make note, especially for the newer commissioners, that catches from the tribal MOUs are accounted for as part of the recreational sector. So these harvest guidelines allow ODFW fishery managers to manage each sector independently of each other so that there isn't a race for fish between the sectors during the course of the year. In the table on this slide, each pair of rows is a species or species group. In the allocation column with the percentage, that is the percentage or how much of the total limit for each species group was assigned by sector in 2025. For example, if we look at the top set of rows, black rockfish, the commercial sector received 24% of the total limit, which equaled 82.4 metric tons in 2025. And it will equal 84.1 metric tons for 2026. These same proportions across species have been used since the early 2000s, with some minor changes when species were moved between categories, but no major policy changes have been enacted since the initial adoption. In that far right column, outlined in a dark red box, are the staff recommended harvest guidelines for 2026, which result from applying those status quo proportions to the total ACL or annual catch limit for 2026. Now that we have allocations, how do we manage the fishery? So we're going to start with the commercial nearshore fishery management measures. ODFW's management objective for this fishery are based on input from the fishery participants and have been pretty consistent over time. They want to maximize opportunity while not exceeding catch limits, aim for predictable year-round seasons, and accommodate seasonality in markets for black rockfish. The tools ODFW has to meet those management objectives are limited entry permit system, which caps the total amount of effort, bi-monthly trip limits by species, depth and area closures, prohibitions on certain species, as well as some gear restrictions. A quick recap of how the 2025 season went. Effort in the early part of the year was higher than average, but has tracked lower since mid-year, falling slightly below 2024 levels. Landings of black rockfish, cabezon, and the other nearshore group have tracked lower than average throughout the year. Landings of greenling have tracked close to average, and blue and deacon rockfish landings, which we manage combined, are a record high for the fourth year in a row. By mid-year, projections indicated fishing mortality for all management groups except black rockfish and the blue and deacon rockfish would be below harvest guidelines by the end of the year, so the department was able to increase bi-monthly trip limits for other nearshore rockfish group, cabezon, and greenling for periods 4 through 6, which is July through December. Current projections indicate that impacts will remain below harvest guidelines through the end of the 2025 season for all species except for blue and deacon rockfish. However, the recreational fishery is anticipated to harvest less than its harvest guideline for blue and deacon rockfish by a greater amount than what the commercial fishery is going to be over. Therefore, there is no risk of exceeding a federal allocation, nor is there a conservation risk. As mentioned, bi-monthly trip limits are one of our key in-season key management tools for each season. The goal of trip limits is to distribute harvest throughout the year by creating per vessel limits for each 2-month period during the year. For black rockfish, there are different trip limits during different parts of the year, while for other species, they're consistent throughout the year. This reflects differential seasonal market demand for black rockfish, which is driven by local restaurants and fish markets on the North Coast during the summer months. Note, we do try to achieve the desired predictability and stability, as was mentioned in a previous speaker a few minutes ago. We do monitor closely in season and can respond by adjusting these limits if there is a conservation need, we need to go down, or if there's an opportunity to provide more access, we can increase. In the table for each species or management group, the column in the middle shows the trips limits that we started 2025 with, and then in parentheses for the bottom 3 rows are in-season adjustments. As you can see with these, which was just for those last three species, the nearshore rockfish group, cabezon, and greenlings. I should mention that for the newer commissioners, the nearshore rockfish group is China rockfish, quillback, copper, and a few other minor, very minor, sort of the colored rockfish as opposed to the blue and the blacks. So focusing on the proposed trip limits for 2026, this table shows, again, on the far right, outlined in a dark red box, the staff proposal for 2026. Trip limits are primarily status quo for 2025 for black rockfish and blue deacon rockfish, and they are minor increases from what was in place at the beginning of 2025 on the other species. Based on that season structure, staff projected the total impacts based on the proposed trip limit structure. All species or species groups are projected to be within their state harvest guideline, except for blue and deacon rockfish, which is projected to be within 1.5 metric tons of the harvest guideline. I do want to note our projection models for both our commercial and recreational fishery, they produce a point estimate, and there is a 50% chance we're going to be over and a 50% chance we're going to be under, but that's where we aim for and we track in season. So we will continue to track and monitor in season and make any modifications as necessary to stay within our harvest guidelines. Another issue, or sub-issue under the commercial management measures this year is looking at black rockfish management areas. 4 black rockfish management areas were established in 1995 to try to reduce potential conflicts between the commercial nearshore and recreational fisheries. The commercial nearshore fishery had lower monthly trip limits in those areas than outside of those areas, and the areas are shown in black in the map on this slide. In 2003 through 2004, an additional suite of management measures were developed for the commercial nearshore fishery, including limiting the number of permits, sector-specific harvest guidelines, and the bi-monthly trip limits I've been talking about. Due to those changes, these black rockfish management areas have not been the primary tool used to limit commercial harvest in recent years. In response to a request from commercial nearshore stakeholders and the information about the other management controls, the Commission suspended the per trip limits in the black rockfish management areas for 2022 and asked staff to evaluate those impacts. However, by the time that was the timing of Commission decision and the season, we had very limited data for 2022 when we came back to you in 2023. So the Commission then suspended for 3 years, 2023 through 2025, and asked staff to reevaluate after we had 3 full years of data. Overall, landings from fish ticket data from inside black rockfish management areas decreased by approximately 4% between 2022 and 2024 compared to the landings previously 2017 through 2021. There is some variation between these individual BRMAs. However, with the limits reduced, with the limits removed, there was a decrease in overall catch by commercial vessels in those areas. Sure, Chair Wall. The information from logbooks and fish tickets since the per trip limits in those areas has been removed. So for the last 4 years, when there have been no special trip limits in those areas, there's actually been less harvest out of those areas than there was when there were trip limits in those areas by about 4%. So not a large decrease, but a little bit of a decrease. It definitely hasn't increased. Yes, ma'am. Okay, sure. So given all of the current other management structure, the comprehensive state of federal and state regulations, it does appear that these black rockfish management areas may no longer be needed to limit commercial black rockfish harvest and prevent intersector conflict. It is important to note that removing these daily limits from the BRMAs does not allow the commercial fishery as a whole or individual vessels to land any more fish than they would have otherwise due to the bi-monthly trip limits. It just allows them to maybe be more efficient and do it in fewer trips and fewer days fishing. Therefore, staff are recommending permanently suspending the per trip limits in the BRMAs beginning in 2026. So This next piece isn't part of your action, but we did want to provide you an update on another issue that was brought to your attention last year by a member of the public concerning the commercial nearshore fishery, the number of permits and the permit lottery. The commission established a lottery system under which ODFW may issue additional permits in the commercial black rockfish, blue rockfish nearshore fishery if the number of permits falls below 80 for both permit types combined or 50 nearshore endorsed permits on their own. Permits that are not renewed are not reissued, so the number of the permits in the fishery has declined over time, as you can see from the number of permits shown in this slide. Currently, there are 42 active black-blue permits and 68 permits that have the nearshore endorsements for a total of 110 active permits. The lottery would be used for any unused or unissued permits, which would then be available to someone who may have more interest in being an active participant in the fishery rather than these latent permits. Staff have met to discuss the issue with the Commercial Nearshore Advisory Panel. It was also a very hot topic of this fall's public meetings, and they put out an online survey to both current permit holders as well as non-permit holders to try to get a broad swath of input. Feedback has been mixed thus far without a clear direction forward. Staff are continuing to investigate the issue and engage with fishery participants and other interested parties, and we hope to be able to come back to you all in 2026 with some more. Now let's move on to recreational fishery management measures. Objectives of the recreational fishery are similar to the commercial fishery in the desire to provide as much fishing opportunity as possible while not exceeding harvest limits. Based on public input, additional objectives for the recreational fishery are to keep the fishery open year-round, as it is an important economic contributor to coastal communities as well as a local food source. Try to have a bag limit of at least 4 fish. Many anglers feel that bag limit lower than 4 fish is the tipping point and will lose angler interest in the fishery. And 2 final objectives are to minimize in-season changes and regulatory complexity where we can. The tools ODFW has to meet these objectives are bag limits, depth and area closures, species-specific prohibitions, gear restrictions, as well as requiring the use of descending devices. A quick recap of the recreational groundfish fishery in 2025. Effort was similar to recent years, with the exception of higher than recent effort in July and August. We had a long stretch of very nice weather in July and August into early September that wasn't broken up by storms, and a lot of people were able to take advantage of that. So through October, there were approximately 96,000 bottomfish angler trips, while the 5-year average is just over 104,000 for the entire year. So again, this graph shows the bottomfish angler trips on the vertical axis and the month on the horizontal. The light yellow or orange color is the 2025 trips, and the 5-year average is the darker bar. Again, monthly effort between January and June was variable compared to the 5-year average, and then July through early September was really nice weather. There was also an abundance of other fishing opportunities available in the ocean, including salmon, Pacific halibut, and albacore tuna, which contributed to high effort as anglers were able to target multiple species on the same trip. Based on the high effort and associated landings of black rockfish through July and early August, the general marine bag limit was reduced from 5 fish back down to 4 fish on August 18th. However, even with this reduced bag limit, data through August continued to show higher than projected impacts, with the year-end projections exceeding the black rockfish harvest guideline by 12 to 15%. As mentioned above, the commercial nearshore fishery is projected to utilize its entire HG. Therefore, there was limited ability to borrow from the commercial HG. However, in the federal rules, black rockfish is part of a complex with blue and deacon rockfish, and with the recreational fishery projected to come in at less than 50% of its harvest guideline, even with the overage on the commercial fishery, all the fisheries combined for black, blue, and deacon rockfish are expected to be under the federal ACL for that complex of black, blue, and deacon combined. So to reduce the amount of overage on the black component, we did changed the bag limit down to 3 fish on September 18th so that we could keep the fishery open for some additional opportunities while still minimizing how much of that buffer that Blue and Deacon provided us. That 3 fish bag limit has not been popular, but to say the very least. But it seemed a better option to us than allowing, because it allowed access to lingcod and other flatfish species rather than a complete closure of the fishery. So combining, sorry, I already said that. The other nearshore rockfish group is projected to exceed its recreational harvest guideline by approximately 0.4 metric tons. The commercial fishery is projected to be under its harvest guideline by more than that. Therefore, we took no action because at the end of the year, we would be combined, we would be under. So during discussions with anglers and charter captains over the last 18 months, a number of management measures were discussed, analyzed, and considered. For the last 2 decades, my career here with ODFW, we have consistently received input from anglers, charter captains, and fishing-related businesses that having year-round bottom fish fishing opportunities should be the top management priority. However, during the public process to inform 2026, which was shortly after the reduction to 3 fish, we have started to receive input from some that a shorter season with a higher bag limit would be preferable. Therefore, we did look at reduced seasons, similar to maybe what Washington and California have. However, the key month of July and/or August would have to be significantly reduced to save any real harvest, to get real savings and catches, particularly of black rockfish. Closing July or August was not supported by most anglers, as those are the most popular fishing months for ocean fishing due to nice weather, schools being out, other fishing opportunities, etc. We also looked at a sub-bag limit for black rockfish as a way to keep overall general bag limit higher, but reduce impacts to black rockfish. However, a number of years ago, we tried a sub-bag limit on black rockfish, and there was a lot of discard mortality as anglers caught and released many black rockfish trying to fill their bag with something else. Staff heard one report, and that staff would have been me. I received one report of a vessel releasing over 40 black rockfish to fill out their bag with something other than a black rockfish. Even with the use of descending devices, this would produce quite a bit of discard mortality. There are also concerns that some novice anglers may have difficulty distinguishing between a black rockfish and a blue or deacon rockfish, leading to potential unintended violations. Also, as we've discussed here in the last few minutes, catches have been near harvest guidelines for pretty much all of our stocks. So there really isn't room in any of our harvest guidelines or any of our federal limits to allow for additional harvest of any of those species. We have also been talking over the last 3 years about the lingcod bag limit. It is currently set at 2 fish in state rules and 3 in federal rules. The lower limit in state rules has primarily been to reduce bycatch mortality of yellow eye rockfish, as they have been a rebuilding stock. As yellow eye rockfish have been progressing toward being rebuilt, which the feds should declare that rebuilt early next year, the amount of allowable discard mortality has been increasing. Additionally, in the last assessment, which was in 2025, the lingcod stock north of 4010, which is Cape Mendocino, California, was determined to be in the healthy zone with an unfished mortality of 64%. The annual federal allowable catch for all fisheries combined north of 4010 is a little over 3,000 metric tons, and the average mortality for the last decade or so has been less than 30% of that, so approximately 1,000 metric tons. Therefore, there seems to be both room for yellow eye bycatch as well as lingcod catch. So to our staff recommended season structure. Taking all of the input we've received, the status of stocks, et cetera, we are recommending the following regulations for 2026. And do note on this slide, changes for 2025 are bolded, underlined, and on my screen in a dark red. Open year-round to all depths. 4 general marine fish bag limit with a 2 canary sub-bag limit, which is an increase from last year, and a 1 fish sub-bag for cabezon, which has been in place for about 10 years now. Increase the lingcod bag limit to 3 fish. The long leader gear fishery would have a 10 fish bag limit with the 2 canary sub-bag, 25 flatfish other than Pacific halibut, 10 sablefish, and quillback and yellow eye rockfishes will remain prohibited. Given those staff recommendations and our recreational model, again, which produces a point estimate, we do want to note that there are several species or species groups which are projected to be within 10% of their harvest guidelines. Specifically, black rockfish is projected to be within 95%. Canary rockfish is currently projected to be over. However, there is more uncertainty in the canary projections due to the limited number of years that canary have been allowed to be retained. As with our commercial fishery, we will continue to track and make changes as necessary in season to stay within harvest guidelines or allow additional opportunities. Sort of a fun update for you all. The Marine Resources Program research group was able to conduct a second comprehensive nearshore survey, coastwide survey this summer. Staff completed 40 days at sea using 14 ODFW and OSU scientists. They were able to take a couple of grad students along with them and completed approximately 300 video drops. Staff are in the process of working up this data over the next few months and will be working to ensure that the data from this survey is incorporated into future federal stock assessments. The new ocean endorsement will be contributing to the funding for additional iterations of this survey, and which will help inform future stock assessments. The previous survey, which was conducted in 2021, was an instrumental piece of the 2023 black rockfish stock assessment. If it hadn't been for that one data point, we would have been looking at a larger than 33% decrease in our black rockfish. So information from that survey is important to our sustainable populations as estimates. So your options for today, or your action for today, are to 1, adopt the staff recommendation as outlined in the draft OARs. 2, you can modify the staff proposals for 1 or more items. Or 3, maintain status quo. And with that, before I take any questions, I do want to acknowledge Ms. Melanie Bukovic, Mr. Troy Buell, Mr. Christian Heath, and Dr. Kathleen Vestfals, who have contributed to this presentation. And while I'm the one here in front of you today, they're the ones who do the day-to-day work. They're the boots on the ground people that talk to anglers, talk to fishermen, hold public meetings, et cetera. So while I'm in front of you, they're the ones who deserve the majority of the credit.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Are there questions? Commissioner Spellbrink.
Thank you, Joel. With the 4-fish black rockfish limit, then there's very little potential to be any closure in the fall.
Chair Wall, Commissioner Spellbrink, there is a reduced potential to have
Okay.
closure or reduced for the bag limit.
Bag limit, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I did get some calls and then I reached out to some other people and I kind of got the same response. And that was, they were, like I'm reading from page 10 here, it says, well, the 3-fish bag limit's not popular. It seemed a better option to allow some fishing opportunity, including access to the separate lingcod bag limit rather than closing the bottom fishery in early autumn. Absolutely, I got 100% behind that because the lingcod population being healthy, the access to that 3-fish limit, I had 100% support behind that. If that's what it takes to keep the fishery open, then absolutely 100% support from everyone I talk to. So nice to be able to have a success story with that lingcod population the way it is and be able to access it.
I do have 2 questions, Lynn. One is, thank you for the and for acknowledging staff in that way. You talked about a few things that I just want to say, what do these mean when we hear them? One is the number of permits are going down, it looks like. The bag limit is at 4, and that's just above the tipping point. And the other one that I heard, and they just kind of combined, is had to go to a 3-bag limit. And of course, those are not popular, especially if it's a tipping point. What should we take from that combination?
Chair Wall, the first question on the permit number is, I believe, is a very separate issue from the 3-fish bag limit. With the number of commercial permits decreasing, people retire, they move out of state, they pass away, and for one reason or another, they have not renewed their permit. They have likely gotten out of the fishery for some reason or another, or they're not a very active participant. They're just holding on to the permit maybe as an insurance policy if another fishery goes down. That has less to do with quota changing up and down than it does with other fishing opportunities, life changes, et cetera. 3 fish limit definitely was not popular, but with the lower, we tried something a little out of the box last year with starting the season at a 4 fish limit, increasing to 5 in the popular summer months. And when we presented that to you last year, we said there was a risk we were going to have to go decrease. We had a beautiful, beautiful stretch of about almost 8 weeks of beautiful weather. Oftentimes we have 3 or 4 days and then a couple of snotty days, and then 3 or 4 days of nice days, and then a couple of stormy days. This year it was weeks, several weeks in a row of really nice days. And a lot of people got out and had a lot of success. Newport is just one port. I drive by the Newport Marina on my way to work at lunch. I walk through there at lunchtime. And that parking lot over at South Beach in Newport was full for almost 2 months, and it extended past Labor Day. So there was just weather and effort combined with a lower limit, a lower overall allowable limit made that necessary to keep something open for an opportunity. And there was a middle piece that I missed. I don't remember what it was right now.
No, you got all 3 of them. Bag limit at 4 and that being by the tipping point and had to go to the 3 bag limit.
Yeah, we've heard from especially the charter boat operators selling a 3 5-hour trip at $75 or $100 for 3 rockfish. That's hard for them to sell, and that is something we definitely considered. That is part of the local economy and part of the considerations that we take into in making decisions.
The second question I have, and I think it's a real quick one, is when will Oregon, you talked, I think of in the report a bit about the federal agencies are changing what they can do and what they can't do currently. When will Oregon have to address those and decide if we're going to step in and fill the gap or not? And I'm assuming you don't have hours and hours sitting around waiting to fill that.
Chair Wall, that is correct. The National Marine Fisheries Service is going through some changes. The West Coast region has lost approximately 40% of their staff, and that's across salmon and groundfish, et cetera. And I believe you heard from Ms. Palmieri earlier this morning. There's still a lot of unknowns in what's going to go on with the federal. So it is to be determined, but there's some stuff still going on at the federal level, at the council level. We just don't know how it's going to impact us directly yet.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Hatfield-Hyde.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna weigh in really quick. Lynn, mostly what I want to do is thank you. And also to really send the message back home to the staff that you mentioned about how much we appreciate them. Especially how much I personally appreciate how much time they spend out in the communities, talking to people, trying to take feedback, trying to work through these issues. That's not always easy or fun. But it's a big deal. And as a desert rat, I'd like to say that every time you come with reports like this, I'm completely following everything, but I'm not, just in case you're wondering. So I'm glad we have commissioners like Commissioner Spellbrink who knows what a fish is. And so thank you.
We have, excuse me, one more question, and then we do have somebody who would like to testify. So go ahead, Commissioner Morrison.
Thank you. And hopefully my question is a relatively quick one. And by the way, I will say that this as my first exposure to regulations around groundfish, this was fascinating. I honestly really enjoyed reading through it. I had initially a question about not having a bag limit for black rockfish, which you've addressed in your presentation about why that is. Even with that, given that there's been harvests at above the HG this year, combined between commercial and recreational, if that happens again, would there be concern about needing to go back to a bag limit for rockfish in future years, or black rockfish, sorry, in future years? Or even moving to some place like where we are with quillback to just not allowing harvest at all?
Chair Wall, Commissioner Morrison, I'm glad you find groundfish fascinating. To Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde's comment, most of the rest of today has been, you guys are speaking a different language. I don't speak salmon. I would rather deal with my 100+ groundfish species. Just a point of clarification, there is a bag limit for black rockfish. It is part of the 4-fish general marine bag. There's just not a specific one for that. We as a state agency don't have to follow the Magnuson-Stevens Act, but at the council level and the federal level, we have to follow the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which says you can exceed an ACL once every 4 years. And if you do that, then all sorts of management measures have to be put in place. We specifically set up a number of years ago this black-blue deacon complex because the species are very similar. They live in similar areas. Sometimes they're hard to identify. We set them up to give us that little bit of a buffer. So federally, legally, we're okay. Does that mean we're not going to try to still aim for the black portion and the blue deacon portion separately? No, that means we're still going to aim for that, but it gives us a little bit of wiggle room on years where we're maybe a little over on one or the other. That's not to say we wouldn't have to go to a lower bag limit on black rockfish because 70 to 80% of the catch of the general marine species is black rockfish off of Oregon. So it drives all of our regulations. We will keep a close eye on it. We're not in NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act is what we jokingly call it at the council level, NEPA jail. If we go over more than once in 4 years, we go to NEPA jail. We're not in NEPA jail yet. We're trying to stay out of NEPA jail while still providing opportunities and maintaining our conservation goals with these species. So hopefully that helps you.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll go ahead and ask Raymond Rowe to come up and we'll have a bit of testimony and then we'll go to a vote. You may. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Don't go too far.
I'll go to. Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hyde, and Director Colbert. My name is Raymond Rowe, and I'm here representing the Pacific City Doryman's Association. I also would like to thank the staff before I get a chance to get away from here, that the Fish and Wildlife staff and of course the commission's heard from me before. And the reason I'm in here today is because I get to agree with staff 100%. And usually back in the day, you know, I started fishing back when I was 9. So back in the day, we had lots of interest and conflicts and going back and forth. And this is all good. And like I said, the staff reaches out to us with concerns all the time. So the Pacific City Doryman's Association respectfully recommends that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Commission adopt the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's staff proposed revisions to the 2026 harvest guidelines, commercial management measures, and recreational management measures as outlined in the attached documents. Of course, you don't have those, but you have them on the board. According to ODF&W staff harvest guidelines table, the proposed recreational limits for 2026 included a general marine fish bag limit of 4 fish. And now I just saw that it's a 2-fish sub-bag limit of canary. When I gave you those letters, it was 1. And then we definitely support a 3-fish bag limit for lingcod. These measures are expected to provide for a year-round groundfish harvest in 2026 without interruptions or reductions in bag limits. And the reason I'm really here is because I've been involved in these fisheries management issues at the council level, representing us at the Ground Fish Advisory Panel for years. And bad data is what comes out of all that. And bad data means best available data. And best available data science always takes away. So now we have best available data science. It's going to give us back like a 3-fish bag limit for lingcod. So I'm here to say, when it gives it back, I've been doing this, I'm 68 years old now. I've been doing it since I was 9 years old. We don't get much back. So when that data provides for information to get it back, we're all for it. You know, and I was on the R&E board when we gave money for the research to do this, and very necessary. So what's going to happen with your license fees getting that? That's going to go to that, and a lot of people are against it, and because they don't believe that it's really going to go to that research. And I say it is going to go to that research. We know it is, but you know, some people don't believe it. So I appreciate your consideration of these recommendations and your continued commitment to sustainable fisheries management. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray, including for staying around all day to testify. So I think we have a couple three commissioners that would like to say something. So let's start with Vice Chair.
You're first.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So Ray, thanks for that. You could have just presented your letter and went home. You've been here since 7:30 this morning. So thank you for making the time to drive over from Pacific City to be here. Thank you for your letter. Thank you for your support, and thanks for the comments about staff.
All right, appreciate it. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, and I wanted to weigh in too and just say the same thing. Thank you for being here all day. Thank you for showing up and bringing some good news. And also thank you for being very cool kind of fishermen that you guys are. I know just enough about fishing to know you guys are pretty cool.
Yeah, we have
Come
one.
to
more
Pacific
comment.
City, we'll take you out.
Go ahead, Commissioner Spellbreak, and then we're.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wall. Yeah, just kind of repeat what was said, but just the importance of showing up. I've seen it in the past where, there was a staff recommendation and the only people that showed up were people against the recommendation. And all of a
Right.
sudden you got, so it's really important to show up, even though I know that a tendency to see, oh, that's staff recommendations, that's going to be automatic. Not necessarily. So I just
I
wanted
agree.
to.
It's not necessary. We can have a whole
Right. I
bunch of
just
people
wanted
up
to
here and say,
emphasize the
there's
importance.
people that don't want to go to a 3-fish bag limit on lingcod, but there's absolutely no reason to not. There just isn't. If they don't want to catch it, don't catch it. I took my nephews out back in the day when we could catch 25 rockfish, and they were 3 in the boat. We had 75 fish, and they're going, "Uncle, you haven't caught yours." And I said, "Uncle's not going to catch his. We're going to take these home." So
Yeah, well, I just wanted to, say, appreciate it, and that it's really important to show up and support staff like you just did. Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank
And
you so much.
bring Lynn back up, and I think we're ready to have a motion.
More than happy to make that motion. I move to amend OAR Chapter 635, Divisions 004 and 039 as proposed by staff in Attachment 3.
Commissioner Spellbrink and Commissioner Moldall have, let me get to that one. Moved and seconded to amend OAR Chapter 635 as was just read into the record. I think that we can do a thumbs up vote on this one. So it looks unanimous. Commissioner Hall DeFreeze, she's a yes?
Yes.
Thank-
Yep.
Thank you. That's unanimous. And we will go then. Thank you very much, Lynn.
Thank you.
Then we will go to Exhibit C, and I think we have yeah. On up. URC. Go ahead and introduce yourself as soon as you're ready to start. We're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Commissioners, Director Colbert. My name is Gway Rogers Kirchner, and I'm the Technical and Data Services Section Manager in the Marine Resources Program.
Is this the first time you've talked to us?
In this role, it is.
Yeah.
I've been before you before. in
Okay,
a
sorry.
Previous job, yep.
Oh, okay, thank you. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Catch.
I'm here today to talk with you about changes that have been made to fees for commercial fishing and buying licenses, permits, and ad valorem fees. I'm going to provide you with some background on the fee increases, though we aren't here to talk about the actual fees themselves. You approved these fees at your June 2024 meeting when you approved the proposed 2025 to 2027 ODFW budget. Today's decision is really about the method by which we are incorporating some of these fees into administrative rule. The Oregon Legislature approved changes to commercial fees beginning in 2026 via House Bill 2342. Revenue from licenses, permits, and ad valorem fees are deposited into ODFW's Commercial Fish Fund, which supports fishery and program management, research, enforcement, and monitoring activities such as you see here. This is our South Coast port biologist, Valerie Stevens, and she is measuring a live grass rockfish that has been landed in the commercial nearshore fishery in Port Orford. The legislation also discontinued the commercial albacore tuna landing licenses. This license allowed vessels not otherwise licensed commercially in Oregon to land only albacore tuna. Removing this license will bring the tuna fishery in line with all other commercial fisheries, and participants will have to buy boat licenses and individual commercial fishing licenses and crew licenses. Following a similar pattern as that developed for the sport fee increases, commercial fees will be increased by 12% in 2026, 4% in 2028, and 4% in 2030. You can see the actual numbers for licenses and permits in attachment to Table 1. The fee increase included nearly all commercial licenses and permits, with the exception of crude licenses and permits for fisheries that have solely been developed through Oregon administrative rule, which are brine shrimp, sardine, and bay clams. These fisheries were developed through ODFW's former developmental fisheries program, and as such do not have any associated statute or legislation. Ad valorem fees were also increased with the 1244 methodology. You can see the specific fee schedule in attachment to Table 2. These fees, these are fees that are assessed on the value paid to fishermen when they sell their catch to processors or fish buyers. Nearly all ad valorem fees were increased with the exception of salmon and nearshore species, as these two categories already had the highest fees of 3.15 and 5% respectively. There is an important note at the bottom of this slide. Your approval to OAR 635-006-0215, which includes the changes to the ad valorem fees, is included in the next agenda item. And to include it here, any action we took here, both agenda items have the same rule open, and any action that we took here would cancel out theirs would cancel out ours. So we needed to put it in one rule. The fee proposal was vetted with the fishing industry and public throughout the development process for ODFW's 2025 to 2027 budget and the 2025 legislative process. A dedicated advisory committee was developed to provide information to shape the fee increases and included fishermen, processors, heads of Oregon's fishery commodity commissions, and interested public members. ODFW attended additional commodity commission meetings to help spread the word to the industry that this work was ongoing and to solicit additional input. And public input was received by the commission at the June 2024 meeting. Not all fee values for licenses and permits are included in Oregon administrative rule. Here's a list of mostly limited entry permits that do have the actual fees cost in state rule. The current OAR structure for these fisheries include a permit fee rule and a renewal rule. To reduce potential confusion and redundancy, and to reduce future administrative actions, we recommend repealing the permit fee rule and referencing the appropriate statute in the renewal rule. Future fee changes will automatically be incorporated by reference. Because these permits are limited and fully utilized, new entrants need to purchase a permit directly from another industry member and follow the requirement to renew the permit. The only open access fishery on this list is the commercial shellfish and intertidal animal fishery. For this fishery, we recommend retaining the permit fee rule, removing the value and referencing the appropriate statute. We recommend removing all rule language referencing the albacore landing license as it's being discontinued. Here's a brief example of what I was describing. So we are recommending removing the permit fee rule. You can see that's all struck out. And then adjusting the renewal rule, this is for pink shrimp, to include the reference to the appropriate statute. So as a reminder, for today, we are here to approve a method by which to incorporate commercial fishery permit fees. And we recommend adopting the proposed Oregon administrative rules set forth in attachment 3. And thank you, and I can take any questions.
Thank you, Gway. And we do have a question, Commissioner Labhart.
Yep, okay, thank you. So great, we're asking for a 20% increase between 2006 and 2030. We have no public testimony. We have no emails. Your public meetings that you mentioned, it's always difficult to assume, but I'm assuming there's not a lot of pushback on this, or because people would be here, or we would have emails or letters, or what's your take?
Yeah, so not necessarily. I think it's because that public process really happened back in 2024 in preparation for the 2025-2027 ODFW proposed budget. It's gone through the legislative process. There's really no decision making to do on those actual fee increases. So there's really, unless you're commenting on, we think that you should keep the permit fee rule, there's really nothing to comment on.
Still great to see. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we might be ready for a motion, if you would.
I move to adopt the staff proposal in attachment 3 and amend OARs in chapter 635, divisions 004, 005, and 006 as proposed by staff.
It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Spellbrink and Commissioner Labhart to adopt the staff proposal in attachment 3 as was just read into the record. Let's do a thumbs vote on this one as well, commissioners, and it looks unanimous. Michelle, and we will move to item D. Thank you so much, Wade.
Thank you.
Then we can go to our final exhibit and look at the people getting to close out the day for us.
You guys are the closers. You guys, is that where we're at?
Okay, finally, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, members of the Commission, Director Colbert. For the record, I'm Nadine Hurtado and the Fisheries Information Systems Program Leader.
Green light at the bottom of it on.
I don't do
There you go.
this.
Okay.
I made it 31 years without doing this.
Doing great.
Oh,
It's perfect.
thank you. Okay, start over or?
Nope, keep going.
Okay. I am responsible for overseeing all the commercial fish landings in Oregon.
Good afternoon, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, members of the Commission, Director Colbert. For the record, I'm John Seaborn. I'm the Operations Manager for the Fish Division, and I'll be presenting the catch and process regulations section of this presentation.
Okay, today I would like to share with you information on electronic fish ticket reporting. I'll be going over information regarding requiring all fish tickets to be electronically submitted, removing the ad valorem rule from the Oregon Administrative Rules, clarifying the limited fish seller rule, and adding a definition of a dock receipt. Sorry, the slide's long, but it's the history of electronic fish tickets. So in 2009, Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission went live with an electronic fish ticket program. At this time, only large wholesale fish dealers were using it. In September 2011, ODFW started receiving electronic fish tickets from Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. In January of 2012, NOAA Fisheries federal rules required electronic fish ticket submission for all IFQ, which is individual fishing quotas, fisheries from Oregon, Washington, and California. For the 2015 Columbia River fall fisheries, all Columbia River gillnet landings below Bonneville Dam became mandatory electronic. Prior to this rule, an ODFW biologist would have to contact each dealer by phone every morning to get accurate fish counts so that the Columbia River, Oregon, and Washington fishery managers could co-manage these fisheries. In 2019, with concerns about domoic acid and not wanting that product to get out into the markets, ODFW and Department of Ag required all Dungeness crab landings to be electronically submitted. In 2021, for better quota tracking for the dive and intertidal commercial clam fisheries, electronic fish tickets were required to be submitted in order to manage the quotas in a real-time view. In 2025, the ocean troll salmon fishery made a temporary rule to have all troll-caught salmon landings submitted using electronic fish tickets. The ability to manage these quotas and possibly leave the fishery open longer brought fishermen and dealers together wanting electronic fish ticket reporting. State and federal fish ticket reporting is needed for quota managed fisheries. Prior to the requirement of electronic fish tickets, ODFW fish ticket staff would spend hours reviewing, correcting, and entering fish tickets into ODFW databases. With the use of electronic fish ticket reporting, both state and federal fishery managers can have a more dynamic management of both state and federal fisheries. Prior to COVID, the paper fish ticket books were printed by a printing company located in Eugene. Sadly, during COVID, they went out of business. The cost of printing new fish ticket books may be more expensive if we can even find a vendor that will print these complex fish ticket books. Because dealers are entering their own fish tickets and not relying on ODFW staff to read their handwriting, their dealer accounts, which is where all the ad valorem fees are generated, have less errors. Dealer workshops have been held in Astoria, Garibaldi, Newport, Charleston, Coos Bay, Brookings, and Portland every couple of years. These workshops are open to any dealer or limited fish seller. These workshops consist of cooperative involvement with OSP, fish ticket staff, and port biologists. They allow dealers and limited fish sellers to meet and ask questions of all the people involved in the rules, regulations, and requirements and fish tickets. ODFW's commercial website has a variety of how-to manuals that I have created for dealers to use. Fish ticket staff will meet any dealer for extra one-on-one training as needed, either in person or on the phone. Fish ticket staff communicate daily with dealers and limited fish sellers. We communicate using emails, phone calls, text messages, and often meet them in person. Since early 2025, fish ticket staff have been reaching out to the remaining paper-only dealers regarding converting over to electronic fish tickets. We've had dealers switch over and ask themselves, why did I wait so long? Most of them appreciate how easy the fish ticket program is and how nice it is the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission created monthly reports and year-end reports for them to run. OSP can also easily assist dealers with questions about fish ticket entry while out in the field, as they have access to the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission fish ticket system and are familiar with it. On this slide, you can see that in 2011, when ODFW started receiving electronic fish tickets, 99.9% were paper, which was roughly 30,000 fish tickets. By 2016, only 48% of the fish tickets were received as paper. Today, only 5% of fish tickets received are paper. That's roughly 1,200 fish tickets. In 2011, we had 214 wholesale fish dealers, bait dealers, or limited fish sellers using paper fish tickets. Since then, most dealers and limited fish sellers have switched over to electronic fish ticket reporting. In 2025, we have 193 wholesale fish dealers, bait dealers, or limited fish sellers using electronic fish tickets. That's 91% of our dealers. 18 are using paper only, which is 8%, and I have 2 dealers that are using both paper and electronic. Staff would like to request all fish tickets to be submitted electronically. This would apply to all commercial fisheries. Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission's website is easily accessed by either a computer, a tablet, or a cell phone. Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission's currently working on developing a cell phone app to make it even easier. We would also like to make all submission timelines consistent to eliminate confusion amongst all of them. Staff would also like to remove the ad valorem rates listed in 635-006-0215, as these rates are set in the Oregon Revised Statute, so anytime a change is made, a new rule must be filed to stay consistent. This is redundant, and by removing this rule, it will be more efficient. Staff would like to change the wording on the limited fish seller rule to be pounds instead of numbers of fish. This will make the rule and current industry practices in sync. Staff are adding the definition of a dock receipt. Dock receipts are used by dealers at the time of landing or offloading, so a computer doesn't have to be used. This eliminates the risk of a computer falling into the water or getting damaged. Dock receipts are currently being used, and this definition makes ODFW rules consistent with industry practices.
Thank you, Nadine. Now we'll start on the catcher processor regulation changes. So for those that aren't familiar with these fisheries, this is a catcher processor. So these are large vessels that ordinarily fish off the coast of Alaska. They do come down here and fish in federal waters during the Pacific whiting fishery. They'll fish off of Oregon and Northern California. These changes, if we approve the electronic fish ticket, would require these vessels also to report on electronic fish tickets. And we're also changing regulation that allows them to weigh at sea prior to landing. Under current OAR, the landing occurs at the port of landing, or the weighing occurs at the port of landing. These would change it to allow these vessels to weigh their fish at sea and report to us. Like I said, these vessels fish off the coast of Oregon and Northern California and federal waters. To resupply and to offload their catch, they transit back to the state of Washington. It's usually about 2-3 days to transit back, and then they offload, resupply, and then come back down off the coast. They burn a lot of fuel to make that trip, and so they approached us about the possibility of them landing their vessels into the state of Oregon. Like I said, the current Oregon administrative rule requires them to weigh at the time of landing and on Oregon Department of Agriculture certified scales. These vessels use what's called a flow scale, which is a different type of scale than what you see on the docks. But the scale is very accurate and it's used for federal management. And so we did approach Oregon Department of Agriculture and have the conversation with them about them allowing these fish to be landed using the flow scales. Because basically it's a commodity in the state of Oregon. So ODA, basically they have the regulations for landing commodities. So we had to check with them first. Like I said, they also transit back to the state of Washington. When they transit back, there's a lot of money that our local communities, our ports, and ODFW as well could take in. So that's why we're proposing these rules. In 2024, we filed a temp rule to kind of test this out. We worked with ODA on compliance with their rules, and we also worked with OSP on any of the concerns they had. What we saw from that rule in 2024, we did see increased revenues that went to the ports. We saw increased revenues to coastal communities. ODFW got increased revenues through the sale of commercial licenses and also for the ad valorem for the landing. It was successful enough that we developed these permanent rules that we're presenting to you today. And we got a lot of positive feedback from the local ports. These vessels come in, they purchase fuel, groceries, equipment. And the catcher processor companies are really appreciative of the fact that they can land into Oregon without having to transit all the way back to Washington and back down again. And as I mentioned, it was very successful for us. We took in quite a bit of ad valorem and sale of commercial licenses. So And with that, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions you might have.
Looks like we're about to get one question, but I just have to say it's nice to have a trend at the end of the day where things, the constituents love what you're doing and it's easy. So it's a different kind of job than we've had before. Commissioner Spellbrink.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wall. Yeah, that's on the catcher processor regulations. Let's keep the money in Oregon. Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that's really, really cool. And I love that we've figured out how to make this work. That seems unusual, right?
Yes.
Well, made it work for both the people doing the fishing as well as it sounds like it will also help with management. Because you'll have the numbers faster and that sort of thing.
For fish tickets, yes.
Yeah, we're talking millions of pounds those guys catch, so.
Yeah, very high volume.
It's great. It's great. Is there a motion on this one?
Weren't happy. I move to amend OAR Chapter 635, Division 004, 005, and 006 as proposed by staff in Attachment 3.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to amend OAR Chapter 635 as was just read into the record. Let's do a thumbs up on this one, commissioners. And can you see, thank you, it's unanimous and we're finished. What a great way. I think we're finished, right?
It's a combined motion.
Nice work. All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Ciao.